Football. I'm your host, Grayson Grunhafer, and today we're going to talk about one of the biggest transfer portal guys that we've seen enter the portal in the last, I'd say, couple weeks. You know, when the portal opened up, we got to see this huge wave of quarterbacks, and there were some really good ones. Obviously, when you're talking about Devin Leary and Spencer Sanders and guys like Luke Altmaier and Jeff Sims, there are some really good ones that entered the portal, but I'm not sure that any are better than Coastal Carolina quarterback Grayson McCall. He entered the portal kind of shockingly, but also it was one of those things where his coach left to Liberty, Jamie Chadwell, and so it seemed like, hey, this maybe makes some sense. It's also kind of weird. He's going to play in his bowl game, which you don't see very often with guys who have entered the transfer portal. But he mentioned he's going to play in the bowl game for Coastal Carolina. Then he's going to go elsewhere to play out his final season. I know a lot of people have talked about how in past years, this was an option for Grayson. He could have left, and of course he could have. I mean, he's 3-time Sun Belt Player of the Year. Very, very good player, took Coastal Carolina to new heights, along with, of course, Jamie Chadwell, his head coach. But this was, I guess, the time. This was the time his coach left, so now it's a situation where you go somewhere, maybe capitalize on NIL, maybe go somewhere that gives you a better chance at getting drafted or getting drafted higher than he would have if he stayed at Coastal Carolina. But a lot of factors that came into this, I'm sure, for him. So I'm just going to talk about a few of the things he did at Coastal Carolina and then my 3 best landing spots for him in the transfer portal, and probably the ones that I think are also the most realistic. So, like I said, 3-time Sun Belt Player of the Year, the 2020 season, the COVID year, that was kind of when things really started to take off for Coastal Carolina. You saw him throw for 2,400 yards, 26 touchdowns, ran for 570 yards, 7 more touchdowns, and you really got to see this whole just new wave of offense there at Coastal Carolina with this kind of, they ran some triple option, they ran some speed option, they really were creative with everything they did offensively. And I think that's really, really important to mention because I think the place that he's going to go to, he's going to want to be utilized as a runner and a thrower in an offense that is creative. I think that's the key to where McCall will land next. 2021, another massive year, 3,100 yards, 31 more touchdowns, was terrific. This past year, he was injured a little bit, missed the final couple games, threw again 2,800 yards, 29 touchdowns. So essentially, you're going to get a guy who's going to come into your program and throw for 3,000 yards, probably around 30 touchdowns, and he's also going to run for 500 and something yards and 7 more touchdowns. There are a lot of programs in the country that need someone like Grayson McCall, and I'm sure this list for him is going to be insane because, again, you're getting a guy who could come in and change your entire program. So, of course, I got to start with the first and probably, I don't know if I'd say the most likely landing spot, but I think the landing spot that most people would probably bet on, and that's joining Jamie Chadwell at Liberty, right? I mean, that kind of makes sense. Go with your coach that's made you successful. I understand all of that. And go try to follow him and become, create this legacy at Liberty as well. Now, you look at Liberty's roster, you look at kind of what they did this year. The quarterback position is an obvious need. And so maybe that's an even bigger reason that he ends up there is he's going to go in there. He's going to be the starter day one. He's going to get an opportunity to kind of groom these younger quarterbacks that they have with Caden Salter there and Bennett as well. So there's a couple young guys on the roster that he could make better. Jamie Chadwell obviously is going to try to get him to come with him. The question is Liberty a big enough move for you to say, okay, I'm going to leave Coastal Carolina and go play similar level of competition? That's the big question mark, I think, with Liberty and him following Chadwell and that kind of theory. Next up, probably one of the more, I'm not going to say it's random and I'm not going to say that it's not possible, but I think it's probably the lowest one on my list currently, and that's Florida. He'd get an opportunity to go replace Anthony Richardson. They need a quarterback. He would obviously fit in really well with what they're trying to do with their quarterbacks. They like mobile quarterbacks. Billy Napier has shown that throughout his career. He likes to have a quarterback that can run. So once again, McCall would fit in nicely there. They were pretty mediocre offensively, really mediocre defensively, and they're in the SEC. So there's a lot of parts that go into that. Are they ready to win now? Is this a program that McCall believes in? Is this a program that he feels like he can get the maximum amount of exposure for him to make the NFL possible, because we saw Richardson make a leap this past season. Final one on the list, and this has been the one that I think most people have talked about extensively. I think this was the rumor from day one when he entered the portal. I think this is one that makes a lot of sense. I also think it's one where you look at it and you go, hey, this is really intriguing. And it goes back to that offensive scheme that I was talking about, but it's Auburn. They have Hugh Freeze coming in. Makes a lot of sense there. He's an offensive guru. Everyone knows that. Creative style of offense, spreads you out, but will also utilize a mobile quarterback. That also goes along with their offense coordinator hire, which was Philip Montgomery, who, of course, was at Tulsa, and then he was at Baylor before that. Again, likes mobile quarterbacks, likes to run read option type things. So McCall fits in really nicely there. The other part of this is their starting quarterback currently would be Robbie Ashford, who showed flashes this year. Very good runner, still has work to do as a passer, but it's kind of the perfect fit for McCall to kind of teach him and develop him, because I think Ashford can be a very good quarterback, but my question is he going to be a great quarterback next year? I don't think he'll be as good as McCall would be. And so that's why I think Auburn makes a ton of sense. Hugh Freeze, a first-year head coach, lots of expectations there at Auburn. So you want to come in and make an immediate splash. And to get a quarterback like this, I think it automatically makes you much more competitive and gives you a much better chance to see, massive improvement on the offensive side. So that's kind of the one that I'm circling. That's the one that if I were to bet right now, that's where I think McCall would go. Of course, lots of other schools are going to be reaching out. It wouldn't shock me if he went to a number of schools. These three just seem the most likely to me, and the Auburn one seems to me, at least, to be the best fit for Grayson McCall for next season. Of course, transfer portal, it's absolutely crazy. We're seeing all kinds of quarterbacks enter the portal. We're seeing really good ones, guys that have been starters at their previous institution for many, many years. And now we're at a point right now where we're seeing tons of transfers. And to see a guy like Grayson McCall enter the portal is one of the crazier things I've seen in the last couple weeks, even though the portal has been absolutely ridiculous this offseason. So that's it for Crystal Ball College football today. Later on, we will talk about some bowl projections. I got some other news and notes as well, but thanks for tuning in today.